I still remember the exact moment my granddaughter grabbed my sleeve and whispered those words. "Grandpa, leave, please." Her tiny fingers were shaking. Her voice was barely louder than a breath, and when I followed the direction of her eyes, I saw something in that house that made my heart sink in a way I can't fully explain. But to understand that moment, you need to know why I moved in with my daughter in the first place. My name is Harold. I'm 68 years old, retired, and until recently, I lived alone in the small house my wife and I bought 40 years ago. After Margaret passed away 3 winters ago, the house felt different. Too quiet, too big. Every room held memories. Her favorite chair near the window. The old kettle she refused to replace. The creaky step on the stairs she always warned guests about. At first, the silence was peaceful. Then slowly, it started to feel heavy. I managed fine for a while. I cooked simple meals, read the newspaper every morning, took long walks around the neighborhood where people still remembered Margaret's warm smile. But my daughter Emily worried about me. She called almost every day. "Dad, you shouldn't be alone all the time," she'd say gently. Emily has always been thoughtful like that. Even as a child, she hated seeing anyone sad. When her mother got sick years ago, Emily practically lived at the hospital with us. So when she started insisting I move in with her family, I knew it came from love. "Just for a while," she told me over the phone one evening. "You can have the guest room." Lily would love having her grandpa around. Lily is my granddaughter, 7 years old, bright, curious, and full of questions about everything. The first time she learned I might move in, she squealed so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Grandpa can help me with homework," she shouted. That was the moment my resistance started to crumble. Still, leaving my house wasn't easy. Every wall felt like part of my life story, but Emily kept reminding me that family should be close. Eventually, I agreed, just for a little while. The day I arrived, Emily greeted me with the same warm hug she used to give me when she was little. "Welcome home, Dad," she said. Her husband, Mark, carried my suitcase inside. Mark and I had always gotten along well enough. Quiet man, works in real estate. Polite, respectful, though sometimes a bit distant. Still, he helped set up my room, even moved an old armchair near the window because I mentioned liking morning sunlight. It felt thoughtful. Lily ran circles around us the entire afternoon. "Grandpa, look at my drawings." "Grandpa, want to see my room?" "Grandpa, can you read my favorite story tonight?" Her excitement filled the house with energy I hadn't felt in years. That first evening, we all had dinner together. Emily cooked roast chicken, just like Margaret used to make. The smell alone almost brought tears to my eyes. For a moment, everything felt right. Maybe this was exactly where I was supposed to be. But sometimes, even in warm homes, there are small things you don't notice at first. Tiny details that only make sense later. For example, the way Mark sometimes went quiet when I entered the room, or the way Emily occasionally looked tired in a way that didn't seem normal. Not exhausted from work, more like worried. Once or twice, I heard hushed conversations late at night in the kitchen, their voices low, tense. When I asked Emily about it the next morning, she simply smiled. "Just work stress," she said. I didn't press. Every family has private conversations. The first night, Lily insisted I read her bedtime story. Her room was full of stuffed animals and colorful drawings taped to the walls. A child's world full of imagination and innocence. As I finished the story, she rested her head against my arm. "I'm glad you're here, Grandpa," she murmured sleepily. Those simple words meant more to me than she could ever understand. After turning off her light, I walked down the hallway toward the guest room. That's when I noticed something strange. Mark was standing in the living room near the window. The lights were off, and he seemed startled when he realized I was there. "Oh," he said quickly. "Couldn't sleep." He forced a small smile. "New routines take time, I guess." I nodded, not thinking much of it at the time. But looking back now, his expression wasn't just tired. It was tense, almost nervous. The next morning was peaceful. Emily left early for work. Mark worked from home, so he stayed upstairs in his office most of the day. Lily and I spent the afternoon drawing pictures and building a puzzle at the kitchen table. She told me about her friends, her teacher, and how she wanted to become a veterinarian someday. "You have to help me practice taking care of animals," she said very seriously. I laughed. "I think I can manage that." The house felt warm and safe, just a normal family day. But around evening, Lily suddenly became quiet. Not dramatically, just quieter than usual. While we were coloring, she kept glancing toward the hallway. At first, I thought she was just tired. Then she leaned closer to me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Grandpa?" "Yes, sweetheart?" She hesitated, looking toward the stairs again. Her small fingers gripped my sleeve tightly. "Grandpa." "Leave, please." The words were so unexpected that I thought I had misheard her. "Leave?" I said softly. "What do you mean?" Her eyes were wide now. Not playful, not curious, afraid. Before I could ask anything else, she quickly looked toward the living room. And in that moment, I followed her gaze. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing, but then I noticed the door near Mark's office slowly closing, even though I hadn't seen anyone walk through it. And suddenly, the uneasy feeling that had been quietly sitting in the back of my mind since I arrived began to grow, because something about that house wasn't as normal as it seemed, and I didn't move right away. Lily's small hand was still gripping my sleeve, her fingers tight, almost desperate. Children sometimes say strange things, I told myself. Maybe she was afraid of the dark. Maybe she didn't want me to see something embarrassing. But the look in her eyes, that wasn't childish imagination. That was fear. And when I looked back toward the hallway, the door near Mark's office had already closed completely. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. "Lily," I whispered gently, kneeling beside her. "Why did you say that?" She quickly shook her head. "I'm not supposed to tell," she murmured. Her voice was barely audible. Before I could ask anything else, we heard footsteps upstairs. Mark's footsteps. Slow, heavy steps moving across the floor above us. Lily instantly pulled her hand away and looked down at the coloring book like nothing had happened. The sudden change made my stomach tighten. Mark came down the stairs a moment later. He looked normal enough, calm, relaxed even. "Everything all right down here?" he asked casually. "Of course," I replied, forcing a small smile. Lily didn't look up. Mark watched us for a moment longer than necessary before walking into the kitchen. That night, dinner felt different. Emily talked about work. Mark nodded along. I tried to act natural, but Lily barely spoke. Every now and then, she would glance toward Mark and then quickly look down again. I kept hearing her whisper in my mind. "Grandpa, leave." After dinner, Emily went upstairs to finish some emails. Mark returned to his office. Lily went to brush her teeth. I sat alone in the living room, staring at the quiet hallway. Something inside me said I couldn't ignore this. Not after the fear I saw in Lily's eyes. A few minutes later, Lily came back down the hallway in her pajamas. She walked slowly toward me and sat beside me on the couch. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she leaned close again, whispering even softer than before. "Grandpa, you shouldn't stay here." My chest tightened. "Why, sweetheart?" She hesitated, twisting the sleeve of her pajamas. Then she whispered something that made my heart sink. "Mommy cries at night." I froze. "What do you mean?" "I hear her," Lily said quietly. "Sometimes she talks to Daddy, and they argue." That alone wasn't unusual. Married couples argue sometimes. But Lily kept going. "And Daddy says, the house is his now." Her words landed slowly in my mind. "The house is his now." I frowned slightly. "Emily and Mark bought this house together years ago. As far as I knew, everything between them had always been stable." "Sweetheart," I said carefully, "sometimes grown-ups say things when they're upset." But Lily shook her head. "That's not the scary part." My heart beat a little faster. "What is?" "What did he say?" She leaned even closer. "He said, once Grandpa signs the papers, everything will be easier." The room suddenly felt very still. Papers. My mind immediately went back to something Mark had casually mentioned earlier that day. He had asked about my old house, specifically whether I planned to sell it. At the time, it seemed like normal conversation. Now it felt different. "Did he say what papers?" I asked slowly. Lily shook her head. "I don't know." But Mommy was crying after that. Before I could ask anything else, we suddenly heard Emily's voice from upstairs. "Lily, bedtime!" Lily jumped slightly and quickly stood up. She looked back at me one last time. "Grandpa, please don't sign anything." Then she hurried upstairs. I sat there for a long time after she left. My thoughts moved slowly, carefully, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. Mark mentioning papers, Emily crying, the house being his now, and my old home, the one I had spent 40 years in. I suddenly remembered something else. Earlier that afternoon, while Emily was at work, Mark had briefly stepped into the kitchen while Lily and I were doing the puzzle. He had placed a folder on the counter. "Nothing important," he had said casually when he noticed me glance at it. Then he took it back upstairs. At the time, I didn't think twice. Now I couldn't stop thinking about it. Around midnight, I finally went to bed. But sleep didn't come easily. The house felt different now. Not warm and welcoming like before. Quiet. Heavy. Sometime after 1 in the morning, I heard soft voices from the kitchen. Emily and Mark. I quietly stepped out of my room and walked halfway down the hallway. Their voices were low, but the house was silent enough that I could hear pieces of the conversation. "He trusts us," Mark was saying. Emily sounded tired. "I don't like this." "It's just paperwork," Mark replied calmly. "You're asking him to sign away his house." There was a long pause. Then Mark's voice came again, colder this time. "It's temporary. Once we refinance, it'll solve everything." Emily didn't answer right away. Finally, she said something that made my chest tighten. "What if he refuses?" Mark didn't hesitate. "He won't." The certainty in his voice sent a chill through me. I quietly stepped back into my room, closing the door without a sound. Now everything Lily had whispered started fitting together. The papers, my house, Emily crying, and Mark's calm confidence. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring into the dark room. Tomorrow morning, I knew exactly what Mark would do. He would sit down with me, smile politely, and slide those papers across the table. But what he didn't know was that I had already heard everything. And for the first time since I moved into that house, I wasn't the one walking into a surprise. He was.